Hey, welcome to Hot Takes. I'm your host, James Scott, here to analyze anything and everything interesting. Let's dig into today's topics.
James, you just hit me with some crazy breaking news.
Yeah, Chris.
So spill some tea for me right now. Just give me the sitch.
Yeah. So welcome to the show. Chris Fernandez, James Scott here. We're in for a very interesting beginning to the show. So I woke up today, I was really very proud of the last couple podcasts that we did, with the Houston Astros, just getting it all out there. And, I knew we had to address this. This is on me. It's on me. Y'all can criticize me. I forgot to name that Mike Fiers was one of the main people, if not the main guy in reporting the Astros scandal. But of course, teams have been reporting the Astros for years on end. So it was probably just the straw that broke the camel's back. But like I said, allegedly, we don't know if Mr. Reddit user was involved. But today, when I woke up, I opened up my phone and I was like, say it ain't so. Because on ESPN, they were talking about this fired Angels employee who had a text message from Garrett Cole, allegedly asking for some sort of sticky substance, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm like, oh no, Garrett Cole's going to get suspended. Oh no. Mm-hmm. The Yankees just got him. Are you kidding me? A full season's coming. Oh no. So I read a little more and I find out that this fired Angels employee had been basically mixing pine tar, which pitchers can and should be able to use when there's cold weather, which is actually, and I want to make very clear here before we jump a little too far in, Garrett Cole's full text message was asking for it for a period of time where they were going to be playing in cold weather. So he wasn't there to use it for any sort of, messing with the ball game and things like that circumstances, although it is worth noting that Cole was an Astro. So I will mention his name here. I could mention the other guys' names. I'll mention another one's name because he's also an Astro. Justin Verlander's name was mentioned. But it looks like, from at least where I'm standing, that players across the league are using something more than just pine tar, maybe unknowingly when it's cold weather, possibly when it's not cold weather. And this could be that substance that, has been talked about by Trevor Bauer, the substance that might have come to Trevor Bauer from Wade Miley last year and causing Bauer to have the year he did. Same thing with Castillo, same thing with Sonny Gray. And what they say the substance is it's some sort of combination of pine tar and rosin, and it adds enough RPM to make a difference with breaking balls, with fastballs. Bauer was like, I wish I could have RPMs that high. And then all of a sudden he does have RPMs that high. You know what I mean? So that's it's very, very clear that we're on to something here. And Major League Baseball's fired the guy. And honestly, if I'm sitting back and I'm thinking about what this could have as an implication in the game, if anyone's found out on the mound for using pine tar or using anything, right? First off, managers are going to be a lot more vigilant in getting these guys in trouble. They're going to be looking out for it. They're going to be looking out for any I'm rubbing the ball down, any sort of because they know if a guy's caught using that mix and they send in whatever it is to test it, and it ends up being this combination, then that guy's getting suspended at minimum. So now I'm thinking, okay, so now all these pitchers are inclined to use this substance less, use pine tar in general, just normal pine tar, more when it's cold because you can't use this substance in general. And it makes me think that my theory from years ago, which is that, because a ligament can only withstand so many pounds of pressure before it snaps, pitchers can only throw so hard. before they break.
Mhm.
And I was thinking that like at some point, relatively soon, hitters are just going to be able to keep getting better and pitchers won't be able to. Now, in the period of time between when I came up with that idea and now, what's ended up happening is basically more of your average arms are able to throw 96 to 100 miles an hour. More guys are throwing harder than ever. So it's not necessarily been playing out the way that I thought it would, where like, you know, the pitching wouldn't be able to keep up. It's more along the lines of what happens when the whole league is maxed out for stuff, you know? And we're already starting to see a lot of pitchers are getting injured. Tommy John surgeries is just so regular. There's all sorts of forearm flexor strain surgery, not surgeries, injuries. And like, you know, people hitting the 15-day DL for this reason or that. And it's happening mostly to pitchers. And relievers will have like a couple of good years and then they'll flame out. So like, I thought like maybe it was just since more average pitchers were getting more velocity that, you know, that was me being wrong and like pitchers finding their way to compete. But what if it's just like a lot of these guys are using the substance, they're using this goo to be able to be effective. And if that's the case, and all of a sudden they can't because they're in fear of being suspended, I mean, we'd enter right back into an era of hitting, right back into an era of power hitting, offense, all of it. Because all of a sudden, breaking balls don't break as much and you get a lot more hangers in the zone. And all of a sudden, fastballs don't have as much ride and they die a little bit. And for patient batters, AKA the most powerful ones in the league, that's most beneficial to them versus, you know, bad ball hitters or aggressive types. We could enter an era where like the guys who just have that approach just do really, really well. I mean, the guys who have that type of approach, they'll see jumps in performance if you change the ball, like was happening in 2019, the juiced ball, or, you know, you'll see jumps in performance if like say you're in the middle of a steroid era, you know, like during the steroid era, patient hitters were the best guys to have because the whole idea was, at least back then, bullpens were weaker than starting rotations. So if you were a patient hitter, you'd work the starting pitcher to get to the bullpen, and then you'd go to town on the bullpen. So depending on the era, patient hitters really do see the most statistical jumps from things like that. However, patient hitters typically don't hit elite pitching. They stay within the zone, they hit mistakes, or they walk. So it's interesting. I wonder if there's ever going to be a point in the game where there's something that comes in specifically that really benefits the aggressive hitter. Because right now, because, you know, power hitters numbers could be going back up, they're once again going to be camouflaged. They're once again going to be, you know, seen as much better players than they are versus the higher levels of pitching because they have higher on base percentages, because they hit more homers. So it's just interesting. I guess it kind of falls into my anti-Moneyball theory, you know, which is that like, you know, it's great to get on base and it's great to hit for power, but home runs come on mistakes, and just walking to get on base, pitchers also have to miss the zone. So the guys most of the time who hit the elite pitching are either the ones who are right in their prime, you know, or they're the ones right before their prime and they're using more zone. They're swinging at more pitches. They're being more aggressive. It's why bad ball hitters hit elite pitchers. It's why they do well in the playoffs. It's why contact hitters do well in the playoffs. It's why those guys always succeed versus the hard arms. It's when hitters have confined themselves to a zone smaller than the strike zone that, you know, pitchers have spots to throw to. Pitchers have spots to get you out at. And then all of a sudden, like, if they know that they can throw a strike to you in the higher upper, you know, say high and away, then they know that they can throw a breaking ball low and in, because that's opposite areas of the zone, and you'll have to compensate for both. And then all of a sudden you'll be prone to the slider as a righty, if you're a righty. You know what I mean? So what I'm trying to say is that, like, up to a certain point, definitely confine in the zone if you're a hitter and you're an aggressive hitter and you're learning patience. But you need to be able to hit different types of pitches, change ups, which is off speeds, breaking balls, sliders, curves, and fastballs, two seams, four seams, cutters. And you need to be able to hit them across zone. So make sure you can hit them outside of zone before you come in zone. A lot of guys, because they're gym rats and they're 6'4", they don't necessarily need to do anything but swing in zone to hit 24 home runs over the course of a full season. Like if you take 600 and like so at bats and you say a guy gets, 4 plate appearances per at bat, 6 plus 6 is 12, 12 plus 12 is 24. That's 1,200 pitches, 2,400 pitches, but 2,400 pitches in a season a batter is seeing in a healthy year. If you get one mistake pitch every 100 pitches, you're going to hit 24 home runs that year. And guys like that, they can hide in the fact that they're not swinging at balls, so they're going to get on base enough. But does that mean they'll hit tough pitching? No, it does not. So an era where everybody is throwing spin that doesn't work, that hangs in the zone, curveballs that don't curve, sliders that don't break, fastballs that don't stay up but drop. All of those types of hitters are just going to go yard that much more often because those are mistake pitches. So it could create a lot of issues with the game, but, everybody likes homers. So,
I mean, it's a lot to think about, especially because, like, just driving back to the possibility of just, like, hitting more homers. Exactly. It's like if the tar was helping them pitch at fast speeds, now it's eventually probably we're going to see slower speeds, and it's just.
Well, it's not even just the speed. And I want to clarify here because when people think that, like, having grip definitely can give you speed, right? But what we're talking about, the advantage that it's really giving is that when you come around on a slider or when you come around on a curveball, if the ball can just hang onto your finger that much longer, it's going to spin that much more. So the break is going to be more. So I don't think it's going to affect velocity as much, although it should a little bit. I think the big thing that it's going to affect is break. So some of these guys who are like, oh, I'm going to throw my pitch here and it's going to break and then it's going to go to the outside corner. You're going to throw your pitch there. And it's going to break as much as it's going to break and it's going to be dead center and gone. So it's interesting to say the least. It could change a lot. So, and again, it seems like it's fairly minor news because not a lot of people are exactly talking about it. It was just kind of like, oh, it's just an Angels employee that got fired. But like you go into the article and he starts naming names. He starts naming.
It seems like a trend in MLB. Something happens and it's just like, oh, well.
There'll always be people trying to cheat the system. Always, especially when no punishments really come down. So sad to see.
It is sad to see.
So that's our opening, as long as it was, but pretty big news. So I figured like we have to mention it, especially because, it's finishing off the cheating scandal with the Astros with this. I mean, kind of connects.
Yeah,
it kind of connects.
More cheating. It's like if you're going to get away with one thing, you're going to get away with multiple things.
Yeah. So actually, what's really cool about today's podcast is that we're launching into a series, a pretty big series too, where we're going to be breaking down team by team, the worst to the best in each division, American League, National League. So we're going to start today, obviously, with the easiest call of all of them.
The Yankees.
I'd love it, right? First place. Let's do it. Let's go. Nah, we're starting off with the worst of the East. We're going with Baltimore. And, oh, my goodness. Baltimore, the reason why I immediately go, oh, my goodness, when I'm referring to them is that they are the only organization that I am aware of in Major League Baseball that just is kind of like, we're not going to use the international market. And like, okay, if you're not going to go out and get like a Japanese or Cuban player for millions of dollars, I get, yeah, I get you. I get that. 100% the risk. It's risky. I get it. Okay. But they don't internationally sign, as in like even teenagers. Like there's an international draft. Okay. Every year, every team has a certain amount of money, depending on where they, lose, how many games they've lost. I believe that's how it's dictated. I think it's the worst team in the big leagues gets the most amount of money. It's a complicated system. And the Orioles just never, I mean, I'm not going to say they never get anyone in that draft, but they don't put out like scouts into doing any sort of work into finding guys. They never get guys who are at the top of the international markets as teenagers. They're not active.
They're just not looking. They're just not
and you
looking.
look in their system. Their system's basically a whole bunch of white guys who are like from colleges and high schools.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like Yusniel Diaz. And Yusniel Diaz is an international guy who they traded Manny Machado for from the Dodgers. So they just don't shop at all internationally. They don't do it. Give me a second here. I'm going to get myself reset up. There we go. But they don't do it. And I don't understand why they don't do it. Every other team in baseball does it. It doesn't cost you that much money to shop on the international market. That's kind of the whole appeal of it. And you always end up getting some pretty premium talents. And they refuse to do it. I don't understand why. They've never explained why. And whenever their top players have been free agents, they refuse to sign them. So what's going to happen if you don't invest in the farm? What's going to happen if you don't bring your guys back? And also, another thing that they routinely don't do, outside of Machado, a lot of their guys, when their guys were at peak value, but they kind of had to deal them to keep things going, they wouldn't deal them. They'd wait until it was like a year before free agency or half a year before free agency, deal them at the deadline, and they can't recover assets ever. So now they suck so much that like they get high draft picks. But like even then, if you're looking at the people in their system, they had a great draft in 2020, and I'm not going to take that away from them. But of all previous drafts, like it's like Ryan Mountcastle, who's a DH. He's a great hitter, but he's a DH. DJ Stewart, decent hitter, DH. Adley Rutschman, great guy, but you got the first pick in the draft. You can't mess that up. So it's just like, I don't know what the Orioles are doing. I genuinely have no clue.
What's your opinion on what's happening though?
I think if they have any sort of game plan, it seems to be that someone within their organization, within their front office or whatever, who has enough influence is saying, our guys, they make a lot of contact and they hit for singles across zone, which is true. Mm-hmm. That's what their players' skill has been so far. Again, the league didn't really know him, but hey, this guy doesn't factor that in clearly. So he's probably all about the zone coverage because they had good zone coverage. He's probably all about the fact that most of these guys that they've brought in, Hanser Alberto, Anthony Santander, Renato Nunez, like none of these guys have costed anything, and they've just brought them in and they've produced. Again, the league didn't know them, and they're fairly polished, or they had specific skill sets that allowed them 1 year in to do well. And then if they did well for more than a year, it's the juiced ball year. Okay. So there's probably a lot of trickery going on with the statistics that they're looking at there. And he's probably saying that because of the zone coverage and because of how hard they hit the ball with the juiced ball, that you can get them to swing at more strikes and develop them all into stars, which is a complete misassessment of the talent on your team.
Mm-hmm.
And he's also probably saying something along the lines of like guys like Mountcastle and Adley and Kierstad, who they got in this draft. These are guys who are going to be able to, and Diaz, they'll be able to come in and support these guys. And then we'll have a cheap offense. And, Grayson Rodriguez is a great prospect. And DL Hall, we think, is going to be somebody. He's a prospect. They'll come in and they'll save us. And then we'll have all this money to spend. And we'll surround them with expensive pieces. And frankly, that is a ridiculous misassessment of talent. Almost all the players on their team have already had the peak year in 2018 or 2019. They're not going to have a year like this moving forward. They already should have sold high on them. They have far too many DH types. Adley's a great catcher, but you got to give Pedro Severino, a little bit more playing time because his StatCast numbers, his XBA and his X slugging and all of his expected numbers, all of them showed that he is an above average hitting big league catcher. You got to give him some time at the big league level because maybe you get a trade chip from him before Adley comes up. So Adley's not even going to be at the big league level, and he's better than Severino. So you're not even getting your optimal catcher situation. But, you need to do that. So I'm fine with it. But maybe they're thinking that, they can start trading the pieces that, they think will continue to do well, like maybe after next year. Like Mancini comes back from cancer, has a good year, you trade him. Mountcastle has another good hitting season as a DH. Got years of team control, no money being paid to him. Trade him for something. I don't think it's enough to get them what they need to succeed. I don't think it's close to enough. I think their farm system is fairly barren. They have 5 guys. And even then, when I say 5 guys, it's not like we're looking at future Aaron Judges. It's Adley, who's great. He could be one of the best catchers in the game. It's Kierstad, who could be a legitimate stud in left field. Grayson Rodriguez, who can be a plus starting pitcher. Could be a 2 or a 1, depending on how he develops. But again, with how Baltimore developed Gausman and Bundy, I don't really trust them with developing pitchers. Gausman and Bundy left Baltimore and went to the Giants and the Angels, respectively, 2 West Coast teams in the National League and American League, which I think that's kind of cool to see when it works out like that, Mm-hmm. And both of them, basically, as soon as leaving the Orioles, became better pitchers than they had ever been. Now, I'm not saying Gausman's going to stay a stud rotation guy. He basically has 1 pitch. I hope he does. I love his FIP. I love his xFIP. I like his strikeout rate. I love the drop in walk rate. Man, I'm developing a lisp here. What's going on? But at the same time, if you have guys that are that good in starting rotation and they're not developing in your system, how am I supposed to trust anyone else? So even if Grayson Rodriguez comes in, how am I supposed to know he's going to do anything? Baltimore is one of the more maddening organizations for someone like me, because whether you're looking at things from a sabermetric analytic standpoint, they're looking at the wrong analytics, or whether you're looking at things from a scouting standpoint, they're not even looking at half the market when they're getting amateur talent. They're not going on the international market at all. It's mind-numbing. And then, from a front office aspect of money management, they don't spend on anyone when they could be spending on guys for short-term deals and then trading them at the deadline for prospects. This is an organization that has sat on their hands and gone with basically what was written up for them. First round draft pick, first pick in draft, Adley Rutschman. Cool. Everyone would have done that. They had the 2nd pick in the draft last year, and I wouldn't have taken Kierstad, but they took Kierstad. He's a great player. He's not a number 2 pick in the draft. Now, I get it. the reason why I love their draft this year was because they did that so that they could save money for their supplementary round and their second round. And it worked. They got some really good talent there, some up the middle guys that look like everyday players. But that's the only legitimately all around good draft that they have had in years. They do not sign anyone with their money. They don't go, they're one of the worst organizations that I've seen in a very, very long time. But position to position, Pedro Severino needs a shot to play every day. He's going to gain a ton of value for them, the kind of value that they want. Value as in, like, they have two catchers. They got Rutschman, okay? And then they got him. And Rutschman's not ready yet. Rutschman, apparently, what I've heard, I believe they announced this last week, that Rutschman's going to be starting the year in Double-A, which is beautiful. I think he's Double-A ready easily, but it's a safe place to start him at, because that's a place where if he needs the whole season, he can spend the whole year there. But if he's as developed as I think, then he can go to AAA and get like some September time, October time. Not even October time because they're not making it to October, but like if there's a couple of games at the beginning, one game, but basically at the very end of the season, last month of the season, he could get a little bit of time there, and then he could start the next year as their catcher. And then, if Pedro Severino has that good year at catcher, you can trade him, and they need to, because like this is a pit. I mean, can I say PISS? I don't know if that's a word I can say here, but it's a that poor organization. Okay, like it's bad. Besides Severino, they have Chance Sisco, who works the count ridiculously deeply to get to his level of production. And quite frankly, I do not think it's anywhere close to sustainable, because the only people who work up to that point and have it be sustainable have been performing in the big leagues for years. So they have lots of production to fall back on. And like, it's just a natural decline for those types of players. You don't come to the big leagues and sustain the kind of walk, strikeout rates, deep counts that Chance Sisco is doing. It's going to go straight into his strikeouts after a certain point in time. And he's not exactly the best defender on the planet either. That's their other catcher. So you got to give Severino time there. I believe that they're going to be giving Mancini or Mountcastle the time at first base. But when one is not at first, the other's probably going to be at DH. I doubt Chris Davis gets that much time next year. He's legitimately one of the worst players in baseball. He strikes out more than, I remember Mark Reynolds even striking out. And Mark Reynolds was twice the player that Chris Davis currently is. One thing I do want to note here is it's very possible that what's going on with Joey Gallo, or what will go on with Joey Gallo, follows the career path of what went on with Chris Davis. Similar swings, similar bodies, similar skill sets, lots of swing and miss, lots of boom and bust ability. Compare the two. And that's like basically their first base situation. I mean, they have Pat Velika, I believe that's how you say his name, listed as a potential first baseman. I don't know why he would be there. They have 5 people potentially listed as first baseman. That's a problem. I mean, what organization has 5 first basemen? What are they even doing with regards to roster building? Like, I don't like going this hard. Together. Like, I don't like going this hard on an organization, but they have like 5 people there. Chris Shaw, Pat Velika, Chris Davis, Ryan Mountcastle, and Trey Mancini. What are they doing there? Obviously Mancini or Mountcastle is going to be the DH, depending on who looks better at first. Mountcastle is a terrible defender, but at least he's younger, but Mancini's coming off cancer. That's your best player. Second base, it looks like they brought in Yolmer Sanchez. Cannot hit, but at least he's a great defender. They still have Richie Martin, he's like the guy could be a model if he wants to quit baseball. He's got a very unique features. I don't think he can do anything as a baseball player, though. But hey, you can make millions as a model, so there you go, buddy. Pat Velika is a glorified Triple A player. He put up great numbers in the minors, but this is a guy who repeated Triple A in order to do that. Get to work the count in some years in order to get to his skills. The performance last year showed up, and it looked good on StatCast. But anyone who knows this guy knows that it's another one of those situations where a guy comes into the league doesn't know them, they're polished, they've been in AAA for a bit. Once the league gets to know you, at best you're a league average hitter, at worst you're like 20% below. And that's basically what they're bringing up here. Ramon Urias, I've never heard of this guy. And I like to think of myself as a position player expert. Mm-hmm. They have one guy I've never heard of in their infield. Then there's Rio Ruiz, who is super overrated. He's got a good swing, but that's it. And people who are just scouting based, where they just look at a swing, they don't look at anything else, love Rio Ruiz. A few of my friends actually love Rio Ruiz. So, sorry guys, you're wrong about him. But there's no evidence outside of a pretty swing that Rio Ruiz is anything. Bottom of the barrel third baseman. And that's their infield. The outfield has like Cedric Mullins, DJ Stewart, who might as well be a DH. Anthony Santander, who can't hit lefties, and his power may not be real. We will see. And Austin Hayes, who was rushed up to the big leagues, and I don't know what to expect out of him. I think he's a great player, but I think he needs more time in Triple A. Otherwise, he might not ever reach that. So that's their team. That's everyone on their position player squad. Yikes, to say the minimum. And pitching-wise, their best reliever is either Dylan Tate, Paul Fry, Hunter Harvey. Like, what are we doing here? I mean,
like visible confusion on your face.
Yeah,
visible confusion.
Like none of these guys, like Bruce Zimmerman, Dean Kramer, Keegan Aiken, Jorge Lopez, like that. Those are your number like 3, 4, 5, and 6 starting pitchers. Your number 1 apparently is John Means, who I'm not that big on, but he figured out, like, it looked like he figured out something new at the end of the year last year. So maybe there's something. And Alex Cobb, who has a history of being a pretty good pitcher. I don't know why he'd want to be an Oriole. And I don't know why the Orioles still have him, honestly. I think he played for them last year. And, you know, if you have a guy like that, don't you want to trade him for something? But, you know, I guess that's kind of the whole thing with the Orioles, is that even if they have a guy who does good for them for a year and they should trade him for prospects, they're so dumb that they don't even know when to do that. So it's a hopeless organization right now, as far as I'm concerned. Clear last place. Like all the teams in the American League East, there's going to be at least a 10-game jump between last place and all of them. If you're an Orioles fan, just like, I don't know, take a few years, you know, like, I don't follow any other sports, but like the Baltimore Ravens are a team, right? Yeah, go follow them, you know, or like the Washington Nationals still have a semblance of the World Series club. Like, they're not that great, but Soto's there and Trey Turner's there. Strasburg and Scherzer are there, at least before either of them gets traded. Go across town and check them out. Just don't go to the stadium if you're an Orioles fan. Don't go to the ballpark. You know, look, we're going to be giving you content. So we'll be doing another one of these next year. Come back next year. We'll tell you if it's the same situation. If it's the same situation, run for the hills again. Like, this is a terrible organization. Might be the worst in Major League Baseball. I mean, honestly, the Detroit Tigers have done a lot in the last year to go from being a terrible organization. So the Orioles, and I'm going to say it, as of right now, they're the worst organization in Major League Baseball. And it's a damn shame because it used to be, the Oriole way. It used to be Cal Ripken Jr. It used to be, like, I grew up with a different Orioles. I grew up with a different view of the Orioles. People used to view the Orioles the way that people viewed the Cardinals in the mid-2000s. It was an organization that was so efficiently run, it could do no wrong. They knew how to bunt. They had, balanced lineups. They had good defense. They had good pitching staffs. They had everything. And that was the whole focus. They were building baseball teams. Now it looks like they're building high school teams. It's terrible.
So now that you've officially ripped apart the Orioles,
2 teams now. I've ripped apart 2 teams. Man, dude, like, is this how it is? Like, we destroyed the Astros. We destroyed the Orioles. Give me another week and
oh my God. I'm like, yo, the shade that you just threw is just, you can feel it through the microphone. It's just, yo, oh my God. Okay.
There's nothing redeemable. There's nothing redeemable outside of a good 2020 draft.
Let's stop kicking a dead horse here and tell me who is the bottom rank for the National League.
All right. So why? National League, the National League East.
National League East.
So this is a tough one, okay? Because this is legitimately a division of just great teams. The Mets just made a really good move. I do think, you know what? We missed that on the opening. I'm just going to touch on that here real quick. Mets traded for Lindor. Mets traded for Carrasco. Now, the reason why I didn't really think of that as like a really big thing to mention at the beginning is because I'm the low man on Lindor. And I know everybody will criticize me. Everybody on earth will criticize me for that. I think Lindor's been one of the 5 best players in the sport over the last 5 years or so. I think he's been incredible. Defense, base running, offense, lefty, righty. I think he's been incredible against elite pitching. But this was a guy who was never thought of to be an unbelievable hitter in the minors. This was always a guy who was a very hard worker, very athletic. One of those guys where he made a lot of contact easily. He had a great eye at the plate. And he was one of those guys who had great baseball IQ. If you look at the numbers, when he came up, he roughly sustained the same strikeout rate, and he had good power in play. And then he maintained the same production, and he took that in-play power and he just started pulling it. That's where he got his out-of-play power from. Then he had to sustain it, so he had to work a couple counts deeper for the next couple of years. And he had a prime in there that was really good. The prime started to go away in 2018. He had a down year. 2019, it would have been really, really observable, but the juiced ball hit a bunch of it. 2020, he was actually a league average hitter. Now, he hasn't ever had the kind of lineup protection the Mets are going to give him, and he's still right there in his prime. Could he use effort to put up a couple more good seasons? Yeah, I think he has about 3 more years left in his prime. But that's the whole thing. After that period of time, I can't imagine him being, a game changer. So for me with the Yankees, yeah, we missed out on Lindor, but next offseason stories out there. Baez could start, confining the zone. Simmons is the greatest defender of all time. Maybe you put him with lineup protection. You put him in Yankee Stadium. The offense comes back. Didi could come back. Point is, I'm the low man on Lindor, and it's not because I hate him. It's not because I don't think he, isn't a stud or isn't one of the greatest players of our era. It's mainly because past the next 3 years, even really the next 2 years, I can't imagine liking him. You know, it just is what it is. Maybe he becomes a second baseman. Second base is very shallow. Then I like him because, he'd be one of the best second basemen in the sport moving forward. But just as a shortstop amongst shortstops, I can't like him that much beyond the next 2 years. So that's why I didn't mention it. Clearing that up. All right. Worst team in the East, though, which is probably now the best division in baseball. Probably. Worst team.
Just so much shade right now. I'm just
I just gotta be honest, because there are going to be players though.
Yeah, but you're too honest though.
Yeah, like for instance, we're about to talk about a team that, despite the fact that they finished in last place, has absolutely so many players that I like, and they have them now. But what we've heard is their new GM is doing something that he's never done. He's going fire sale. He's willing to trade almost everyone, if not everyone. I don't know if it's I don't know if it's everyone, but almost everyone, to start over with this team. While the Mets did what they did, so they're definitely not last place, and the Braves are still killing it. They had a great last year. With the Nationals having just added Josh Bell and having enough money to go surround Trey Turner, the best leadoff hitter in the game, and Juan Soto, the best hitter in the game, surround those two guys with other players. I mean, they already have Robles for the 9 slot. They already have Keyboom, who can be at the bottom. They already have Bell, who you can put at the back of the middle of the order. So they have something with regards to putting together a really good offense. And the Nationals have Strasburg, Scherzer, Corbin. So they can't be the last place team. And the Marlins took massive steps forward, pitching and hitting last year. So with this team officially fire sailing, and with this team having no depth whatsoever, and with this team having issues with the back end of their rotation, they only have 2 great starters, and then it's nothing. Well, I won't say nothing. They got a prospect. The Phillies are the worst team in the National League East next year. Wow, did that blow up in their faces. I feel bad for them. They constructed one of the best 1 through 9 lineups in baseball, even versus elite pitching. They constructed the top of a rotation, 3 guys. They constructed the top of a bullpen, like 3 guys. But they never filled out the bullpen. They never filled out the rotation. They never gave themselves depth. And instead of upgrading the lineup on the year to year with people who could have a breakout year and supplant the other guys, they basically kept it the same group the whole time. And their rosters were millions and millions of dollars. Like, it was a lot of expensive players, and they went absolutely nowhere with it. And that hurts. I know so many Phillies fans that were telling me, oh, with this team all together, wait till they add depth, and it never happened. And now they add this new GM, the Red Sox old GM, the Tigers old GM, the guy who formerly is known to blow up farm systems just to make your major league team good and just not care about the system so long as the big league team's great. What he is doing now and what he's announced that he's doing the exact opposite. He's blowing up the big league team to fix the farm system. And that's what he said he's going to do with the Phillies. And that is Dave Dombrowski. Okay? Depending on how you feel about Dombrowski, he's either Dom or he's dumb. Okay? And that's how my friends talk about him. And my personal opinion on Dombrowski is he's the ultimate GM if you're in a place to win a World Series, your window is a limited amount of time, and you have prospects who are not going to be ready for you in that window. You bring Dombrowski in, he'll get you the big pieces, he'll sell the farm to do it, but now you're in a position to win the World Series. He did it with the Red Sox at the exact right time, and they put up one of the best seasons of all time and won the World Series easily in 2018. I believe if you add up all of their victories for the whole season. They lost something along the lines of, and I'm talking about the playoffs too. Yeah, the playoffs in too. They lost something like 56 games. And if you add the wins from the playoffs, they won something like 119. That's nuts. And they did that because Dombrowski came in at the right time and did that. Dombrowski's now doing something he's never done. He's building a farm. He's fire sailing. So that at minimum is exciting. I will say, Phillies, you have one of the best managers in baseball. Joe Girardi is an incredible manager. He was an incredible manager for my Yankees. I hate that he's gone. Don't get me wrong. I think that Boone is new to managing and he can get better. And he will get better each year that he's in it. Girardi offered everything I loved about a manager. Every single thing. So keep him. Unless you can trade him for prospects too. Keep him. I don't know if you could do that. We're not in the 40s or 30s, but okay. But no, like you guys let Real Muto, the best catcher in baseball, actually walk via free agency without giving him any sort of offers, without trying to trade him for prospects at the deadline. And you guys traded prospects to get him. Like Jorge Alfaro and forget who the other prospect was, but you guys, Philly fans, you dealt prospects for Real Muto only to let him walk for nothing and not even offering him a contract. So I don't know what the plan is there. Hoskins is a good hitter, but he's a mistake hitter. If you give him something to hit or you hang a curveball, he's going to go yard on you. But outside of that and outside of walking, he doesn't really give you much. I guarantee you he's going to get traded, though, because he's a perfect 6-hole hitter. He's a perfect 7-hole hitter. Once you get through the most dangerous hitters in the order and the pitcher's tired and he can't throw, as good a breaking ball as he would have, and it's like the second time through the order or the third time through the order, Hoskins comes up after the middle of the order, after the pitcher's exhausted. He's the perfect guy to have in there. Pitcher throws a hanger, boom, gone. Or he walks. So Hoskins, I'm not really trying to trash on him. He's just a patient type, patient power type, not my kind of hitter. Clearly has his place on a championship club. You move to second base. It was, technically second base is Kingery. Kingery, outside of having the juiced ball, can't hit at the big leagues. And for years on end, I don't know why, I had this perception in my head. Kingery's a lefty. Kingery's a lefty. Kingery's not a lefty, so you can't even platoon him. So we don't know if he's a big leaguer. I think the best chance of him hitting, try to put him in center field, take the pressure off the defense, let him just concentrate on the bat, but that's not good. Didi Gregorius, another great player, stud, who you got and then just let walk instead of trading for prospects mid-year. I don't know what the plan is there. At third base, you had Michael Franco, who was a decent player, and instead of trading him, you released him. Just like behind Kingery, you had Cesar Hernandez. Instead of trading him, you basically released him. Indians got him for nothing. Cesar just had one of his better years for the Indians. So I don't know what the plan was there. And then with regards to their old third baseman and their new shortstop, that's Gene Segura, who's gotten a little bit worse each year. But because the Phillies have now forced a patient profile onto him, he's going from being a contact hitter who was dangerous because he could hit contact against all pitches to all zones, all fields, to now he's become a patient hitter and not one who has a lot of power. So what's the point in being patient? What's the point in working the counts to get something you can hit for power if you can't hit for power? So hopefully, he'll give you enough to be a shortstop, but he's not even that great of a defender there. And whenever he has had to play shortstop, he's not been able to concentrate on his base running. And in fact, the only year where he was a plus base runner was when he was with the Diamondbacks, who are a very smart club and might have just had him running on the coach's signals. So that's a mess in the infield. You got to trade McCutchen. He's like 34 years old. He can still produce. You'll still be able to get something for him in a trade. That's your left fielder. Hazley will probably take over left, or maybe you'll put Kingery there, keep Hazley in center. Who knows if Hazley's going to hit? And then you got Harper in right field for like millions and millions of dollars, but he's a stud. You should trade him, get a lot in return. Their current third baseman is Alec Bohm. He's the best player on the team that they should be keeping. Not the best player on the team, period, but the best player that they should be keeping. He just came up last year. I don't know if he's a third baseman long term, which is part of the reason why they should probably trade Hoskins, put him at first base. But Boom is a hitter. I watched him in the Arizona Fall League out here. He is a masher. Now, they called him up straight from Double-A. There was no minor league season last year, so they called him up based off of how good he looked in, the camp results against people within the same organization in camp play. So I don't know whether next year the league will adapt to him and he'll have a little tough time. But I like his swing. I like how direct he is to the ball. I like his contact ability to such a degree that I can't imagine offensively him falling off too much. If you are a Phillies fan and you want to know who to rally around for the future team that will one day be a playoff team in Philly, the guy that will be kept and then will be part of that team is Alec Bohm. But don't get too locked onto him as a third baseman. If he stays a third baseman, beautiful. Not, he's a first baseman. Now, the bullpen's basically barren. You got to fix the bullpen, but you got a bunch of young guys like Vince Velasquez. Give him more innings. Any of the older guys you want to deal. The rotation has already lost Arrieta, who was basically their 3-starter and a great starter in must-win games when he can kind of step things up. But he's not the same Arrieta that was with the Cubs that went all of those innings and killed his arm. Their rotation is essentially Spencer Howard in the 3 spot. He's a prospect. And then Aaron Nola, stud, and Zach Wheeler, stud. But both of those guys are spin rate guys. They spin the ball really well to get to their results. Wheeler being a curveball, fastball guy, and Nola also being a curveball, fastball guy, but he's got a bit more of a higher break. With very possibly, we don't know whether they used the substance, but with very possibly that substance being on alert throughout the game, if they stop using the substance, specifically being fastball, curveball pitchers, it can really impact their performance. So I'm hoping that they didn't use the substance. But if they did, that's even worse. And to be completely fair, that's 2 starters in the prime of their careers. You should trade them. If you're truly fire sailing, use all of your chips. And given that Didi and Real Muto aren't chips anymore, and Kingery's not hitting, and Segura is past his prime, biggest chips you got are like Harper, McCutchen, Hoskins, Wheeler, and Nola. So those are your guys to trade. Phillies fans, if you want to get excited about the future, start dreaming up trade potentials. You know what? In the comments, shoot me some of your trade potentials. Who you'd like to see who dealt for who. A lot of teams need pitching right now. A lot of teams need middle of the order bats. I'm pretty sure any team would love to have Bryce Harper. I would love to have Bryce Harper. Please. Oh my God. If I could just Dodgers, go take Stanton. We'll just take Harper. I would do it. Okay. No diss to Stanton. He's not my type of hitter. He's a guy like Hoskins. So patient type. If you make a mistake, it's gone. And then outside of that, he'll walk. So that's the Phillies. Unfortunately, they are a last place team. I don't even like that they're a last place team. I love their uniforms. I love their ballpark. I love that their fans are like hockey fans, although they can get a little rough. The behavior from the Phillies fans in the 2009 World Series that deserves its own entire podcast.
Hey, listen. We can do
I was there, man. I was there.
You were? No.
Yeah. So I saw it, man. The Phillies would make one good play and people would just stand up and start blowing kisses to Yankee fans. What are you doing? What are you doing?
No.
So, but hey, y'all got Alec Boom, and y'all got some real good trade chips. And it's going to be a really exciting time because these players that you're trading and the players that you're going to be bringing in, that's your future. You're going to be getting some legitimate prospects, some guys who are going to be exciting to follow, not just as they develop through the minor leagues, but once they come up to the big leagues. It's always fun when you get a guy like Alec Bohm. I've been following him for a few years, and he does great in the Arizona Fall League. And you think he's going to do great. He's got a great swing, and he gets called up, and he does great, So hopefully in these trades, Phillies fans, you can get some of those because you're not in a situation to win right now. And I think even you guys know it deep down. I'm sorry. It's what it is.
I don't feel like that was as bad as the Orioles be. I feel like although you're ending it with like, hey man, like things are what they are, you're still leaving that kind of like hope in there of like things getting better.
Yeah, they have like 5 guys, and change to deal for all sorts of prospects. The possibilities when you have Harper to deal, when you have Hoskins to deal, when you have Wheeler to deal, and Nola, even McCutchen at this point, especially if you package him maybe with Segura or you package him with Hazley or whatever, right? You can get a farm system there. And between that and like being the bottom team in the division, you'll get high draft picks. So you can turn it around fairly quickly. So there is hope. And the players that they do have for trade chips, like I just named, all 5 of those guys, well, I'm not as big on Hoskins, but it's because of the type. He's a great player, but it's his type. With Harper and with McCutchen and with Wheeler and Nola, all 4 of those guys are some of my favorite players in the entire sport. So, as far as I'm viewing all of those guys as elite talents. If you have 4 elite talents, 4 separate trades, even if, the league doesn't view, well, some teams in the league will understand why McCutchen's still an elite talent. Some teams won't. But even if they don't understand McCutchen as an elite talent, put McCutchen with Segura and Hoskins, and he's more valuable than any of the other chips. So you can get 4 serious trades, likely more, done with this group. And then you add the draft picks from the next couple drafts, and you add Spencer Howard developing in the rotation, and you add Alec Bohm, and you add that maybe Kingery's offense will come around, or Hazley if you keep Hazley. I don't know. I think that even trading all of those guys is going to shed salary. So what's to say that you can't sign, a couple of guys to 1-year deals or 2-year deals and trade them for prospects too? It's very much a salvageable situation. And the Phillies also, as well as Dombrowski, have never been afraid to spend. So dealing all of that salary, you're going to put yourself in a position to spend. I don't feel bad about the Phillies situation because so much can be done.
Mm-hmm.
Like they can legitimately, if they do everything right, turn everything around in as little as 2-3 years. Like that. Whereas the Orioles, I mean, it's top to bottom that they need to fix. So, and that's our show for the day.
You literally just go in. I'm like, oh my God. Yeah.
Now, we have our last segment just to finish everything off. We're now doing this really cool format where we're going to tell you what goes on with the week and all the updates and everything at the beginning of our shows. At the end of our shows, because we love music and we love, TV shows, we're going to do 3 songs, 2 songs, and a show. So this week, we're going to start it off with just 2 songs. We'll give you a little bit of a taste. Chris has a song. We're going to play a little clip of it. I'll let Chris, you can choose what part of the song you choose to play. I don't know if we can play too much of it without, getting some sort of licensing or whatever. So maybe we want to go something like 10 seconds of the song or 15, because I think, once you get to 30, we'd be a little bit in trouble, right?
No, so we can't play any. I'm gonna edit this out.
That's fine.
Yeah, I'm gonna edit this
out. All
right,
so
we can't play any of the songs, so just restart that.
That's fine. So Chris, you got a song for us. What is your track for the week?
So I actually was in a really chill mood this morning, and I went to my Discover Me playlist on Spotify, and I heard this song "Safe with Me"
Yeah.
by Griffin and Audrey Micah. It's the acoustic version, and there's just something about an acoustic guitar
Oh,
that just it's chill.
oh
It's
goodness.
chill.
Yeah. Uh I gotta share with you a rendition of this old track, at some point. Maybe I'll use that track on one of these weeks, but it's an acoustic track of a hip hop song and it
Hmm.
blows me away.
Oh, I'd love to hear that.
It's fantastic. And my track for this week is called Role Models.
Hmm.
It's by Walker and Royce, which is, that's one artist, and On Cue, which is one word. And it's kind of electronic and vibey. And whenever I want to hear something that's kind of fresh, that like doesn't sound like a lot of other stuff, last week or so, I've just kind of put that on. Definitely check it out. And in upcoming weeks, we're going to have a third song for you, especially if you like that segment, as well as either a show or a movie. I've been James Scott.
And I've been Chris Hernandez.
We'll see you on the next one.